So, I wanted to address the largest issue in the Christian church that nobody is talking about these days. And this is the 1040 window. This is a cluster of nations within Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Nations that are primarily Muslim and Asian, hostile to the gospel. I'm going to show a picture of the 1040 regions right now. And over 3 billion people in these nations have never heard the message of the gospel. I hope that breaks your heart, because it breaks God's heart, and it breaks my heart. I am currently in Taipei, in Taiwan right now, one of the nations within the 1040 window. I'll show you a quick map of Taiwan. So according to statistics, some 3.9% of Taiwan's 24 million people are Christians. That is less than 4% of this country considers themselves Christians. However, some 62% of the Taiwanese people that are highly educated, only 0.5% of those people, so that's less than 1%, are considered Christians. I'll show you a picture of me in front of Taiwan's largest building, which is Taipei 101. Now please watch this video. I know this doesn't sound like a real hot topic, but if you stick with me, you'll see just how important this issue is. I do videos on scandals and I get thousands and hundreds of thousands of views. But when I do some of my best videos on great topics like this, it seems like no one really cares. There is so much talk right now in the church on the end times, and rightfully so. Many people are suggesting in the prophetic community the imminent return of Jesus Christ at any moment. It's almost an obsession to the charismatic and prophetic communities to talk about the end times. And I believe that we're getting closer to the return of Christ and that we're in the end times. However, Jesus said very clearly in Matthew 24:14, "And the gospel of the kingdom must be preached to the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come." So I reached out to Joel Richardson, who I consider to be one of the best teachers on the end times, and I said to him, how could we preach the imminent return of Jesus when over 3 billion people haven't heard the gospel? And his response was, well, we can't say imminent like it could happen any moment, but we could say that it could be a few years away. And his response was that the return of Christ could be very soon, but there are definitely many things that need to be set into motion, and some of those are being set into motion right now. We desperately need to get away from American Christianity, being centered on just our focus on the West. To get a real understanding of what's going on in Christianity right now, the biggest moves are happening in Africa and South America, where millions of people are coming to faith in Jesus Christ. So the biggest moves of God's Spirit are not happening in the United States of America, and for good reason. Okay? We're seeing right now that God is cleaning house within the American church and just taking out the trash right now with some of the things that need to be fixed for the gospel to really go through forth in America. But nations like Iran and China that have underground churches, they are exploding and millions of people are coming to Christ. But my main point in this video is that unless these nations within the 1040 window are reached, the return of Jesus Christ will tarry. This has to be done. The gospel must be proclaimed to these 3 billion people who have never heard the gospel. So let me explain to you first in more detail what the 1040 window is. The 1040 window is a rectangular area of North Africa, the Middle East, and Asia between 10 degrees north latitude. I'll show you a picture of the 1040 window right now. This area is also called the resistant belt, which includes the majority of the world's Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists. Most of the people living in this region are still waiting to hear the gospel for the first time. These nations include China, India, Turkey, Iran, Sudan, Egypt, Japan, North Korea, and Taiwan, where I'm at. The 1040 window has about 50% of the world's population. And 86% of the Muslims, Buddhists, and Hindus don't even know a Christian person. That is shocking information. Only 3% of world missionaries are focused on this region, and only 2% of America's donations to missions are going to this region. So just for some practical implications here, I know my parents like to support various organizations all around the world to see the gospel proclaimed. And I just keep telling to my dad, because he likes to be a generous giver, Dad, stop giving money to CBN and TBN. These are larger ministries that have multi-millions of dollars. Start sending your money to support nations in the 1040 window, okay? So for instance, I was in Turkey a few months ago. I'll show you a quick picture. 95% of this nation, of 85 million people, are Muslim. I remember being so brokenhearted about hearing this. So approximately 5.3 billion individuals residing in 8,700 distinct people groups are in the revised 1040 window. 6,000 of these people groups are considered unreached and have a population of 3.2 billion people that have never heard the gospel. This means that approximately 62% of these individuals in the 1040 window live in an unreached people group. Okay, so they're not being reached for the gospel. Remember, the main point of Christianity, the main instruction Jesus left us with was the Great Commission. With all of the nonsense going on in the prophetic and charismatic communities, we've gotten away from the gospel. We've gotten away from the simple things such as prayer, reading the Bible, and the simple instructions to take the gospel to all nations, making disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. It didn't say to make church members. It said to make disciples. But is America really doing this? In the American church, are people leading people to the Lord? And as I did a video on evangelism a week ago, it showed that 90% of people have not shared their faith with anybody in their life. And out of that 90% of them haven't done it in the last 5 years. Is the America church focused on world missions? Not really. Actually, the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Latter-day Saints do a much better job of evangelizing than the Christian church and their cults. Actually, more missionaries I found when I was taking a missions class in seminary, more missionaries are coming to America than any other place in the world. So a lot of the missionaries that came and visit us in class said, you think that you guys are praying for us, sending missionaries to us? We're praying for you. We're sending missionaries to you because we feel like the American church needs the gospel even more. Because we have this watered down, gummy bear, Mickey Mouse version of Christianity with no cross, with no debts, with no suffering. And this is not the true gospel. A matter of fact, missionary after missionary came to my seminary class to say American Christianity is the joke of the world. It is a joke. It's not Christianity. And we are praying for you. We're actually sending missionaries to your country. So actually, that's a sad fact, okay? The American church is not stepping up into world missions. They're not evangelizing. They're not preaching the gospel. We have huge holes with like the death of Billy Graham, and some of the greatest evangelism died. And so other people haven't stepped up and taken that place for world missions. The 1040 window contains 4 of the world's most dominant religious blocs. The majority of the followers are from Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism, as well as there's a non-religious bloc that live within the 1040 window that have no faith. On the left side of the western part of the 1040 window, the Muslim world can be seen primarily in a wide band across North Africa to the Middle East. Southeast Asia, in the middle of the 1040 window, is the heart of Hinduism, with its 33 million gods. Buddhism influence on the right side or eastern part of the 1040 window. Buddhism is the primary religion of Southeast Asia, and although officially an atheistic country, since the Marxist revolution of the late 1940s, China is nevertheless deeply influenced by its Buddhist roots. On the top of most of this, these nations primarily live in poverty. The 1040 window is home to the majority of the poor people in the world. Of the poorest of poor, more than 8 out of 10 live within the 1040 window in the world. On average, they exist on less than a few $100s per person per year, okay? So a part-time employee in my business would make more in a week or two than these people would make in a year. It has been said that the poor are the lost and the lost are the poor, as a majority of the unreached live in the poorest countries of the world. And Jesus had a particular emphasis on the gospel being something for poor people. And in the book of James says, undefiled religion is to take care of the poor and the widows and the fatherless. Okay, so this is very important as Christians to take care of the poor people. There is a remarkable overlap between the poorest countries of the world and those that are least evangelized. And this is something that shocks me the most. Not just talking about the 1040 window, but in general, the people that need the most amount of help get the least amount of help. And I don't know how this is, but it breaks my heart. The 1040 window includes numerous spiritual strongholds. So these nations are hostile to the gospel. Muslims are usually hostile to the gospel. They have, a lot of their countries have Sharia law. They are not kind to Christians. And I know in Sudan, they even murder Christians. And they'll even murder whole groups of Christians. I know that I heard this one missionary story in Sudan where they nailed the pastor to a tree that was right in front of his church, and they put all his congregation inside, and they burned the church building and let the pastor see all of his church members dying. And these were Muslim people that did this to the Christians. Now, there are some Muslims that are very peaceful people, but in Sudan, they happen to be very hostile to the gospel. In Afghanistan and in Muslim countries, I have a missionary friend of mine that just goes to Muslim countries, and he tells me, I get shot at a routine basis. It's almost a normal part of life, so that I don't even flinch anymore when bullets whiz past me. So the billions of people who live in the 1040 window have suffered not only the ravages of poverty and disease, but have also been kept the transforming power of the gospel. There are poignant examples of this truth expressed in 2 Corinthians 4 verse 4, which states that the God of this age has blinded the midst of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel and the glory of Jesus Christ, who is the image of God. And we serve a merciful God, so that even in this terrible Palestinian-Israeli war that's going on, Jesus is appearing to the Palestinian people, and they're having visions and dreams of the glowing man in their dreams. But in many ways, these people are blind to the gospel. So I hope you're seeing how important this issue is. These nations that are the least reach for the gospel are getting the least amount of help, are getting the least amount of missionaries. And these nations are hard ground to preach the gospel in. So we put our focus on all nations of the earth, because that's our job as Christians. As Jesus said, make disciples of all nations. We have so much wealth, so many possessions and comforts here in America. And will we put those things aside? Will we sacrifice for the rest of the world, for the people that need it the most? Can I ask you today, do you care about the lost? Do you care about these 3 billion people who have never heard the gospel? Are you ready to do something about it? Are you ready to support missionaries in that region? Are you willing to take a missions trip to the 1040 window? I have a friend of mine that routinely goes to Turkey and fell in love with the people. Are you willing to go to Israel? Are you willing to go to Egypt? Places like that need the gospel. I will be posting more content from Taiwan in the next few days, And I would appreciate it if you could share this video on your social media account, because I want to get this message out, because there are so many Christians that don't know about the 1040 window. And this is returned. This is connected to the end times and the return of Christ, because until the gospel has went to all nations, the return of Jesus Christ will tarry. And so I would appreciate it if you can share this video, help me get this message out. Or at a minimum, just like the video so that YouTube will get this out to others. Comment down below, let me know your thoughts, especially if you're one of these people that are in the 1040 window. I would really like to hear your thoughts and your comments. I would like to really hear about what your ideas are for missions, what you feel like God is putting on your heart to reach past the Western world, out into the world. I'd really like to hear it. I would greatly appreciate if you would want to support this channel. You can find more information about that in the description section of this video, so that I can continue to do videos like this and do mission trips and evangelism in New York City where I live. And I would also love to connect with you on social media. I'm on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Rumble, and I want to connect with you on other platforms, okay? So be blessed. Thank you for watching today. And I pray that you would take the Great Commission serious, to go out into all the world to preach the gospel, baptizing people in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. This is the main point of Christianity. Be blessed today.